When you make a child theme from scratch, you start off with a theme that displays all the content without any style, just like you see here. That's because your child theme style sheet is empty. If you're going to build a new layout with a completely customized style, this is great because you can just start from scratch. But in most cases, you want to import the existing styles from the parent theme and then use them as a reference and a starting point. Now, if you've never worked with style sheets before, I'm going to give you the 1-minute demo of how CSS works. You see right now we have a page with absolutely no style at all. And if we go to Eclipse, we'll see that page. And as you can see, there's no style code. All we have is this commented out section that explains to WordPress that this is a child theme. What I'm going to do is add a very, very basic style and show you the cascade in action. So I'll say body, which affects everything on the page. And then I'll say background, which shockingly sets the color of the background. And I'll set the color to magenta, which is like a pinkish color. I'll save this, reload the page, and you see the background is now magenta, or hot pink. Now, you'll see the cascade in work. The reason why CSS is called cascading style sheets is because whatever is the lowest down in the cascade has the most weight. That means if I go in and add another body style here and set background to blue, because background blue is farther down in the cascade, it has more weight and therefore is applied. So I'll save this, reload the page, and you'll see the background is now blue. We can even do the same with something else. We can add more styles to the same call. So I'll say color, which is the color of the font, and I'll say white, and save it. And you'll see that even though the blue is controlled from the second body style, because the second body style is not overriding the color of the font is still white from the first one. So this is the core concept of style sheets. Now I'm going to just delete all this, and we can start over. When working with CSS, there are two fundamentally different approaches you can use to approach the code itself. You can either overwrite the original code by either deleting it and then rewriting a new type of code, or taking the entire style and rewriting every aspect of it. Or you can do the more subtle overwriting, where you just find the components within the code that you want to change and you just make changes to those small pieces. It's a more subtle effect, but it gives you the same result. However, it's bigger. When it comes to overwriting versus overwriting, there are some fundamental differences in how they work and what sets them apart, and there are also different instances where you would use one over the other. So let's take a look at them in a little more detail. If you look at overwriting first, when you overwrite styles, you're given full micromanaging control. That means you write a new style sheet or you completely supplant the original style with a new one, and that means you have complete control over every single element of that style. That also means the overwritten style ignores present and future parent styles. So if you have a parent style and you overwrite it, the parent style is completely ignored. That also means if the parent style is updated in the future, you are still overwriting it so you won't see it. That in turn means you have no surprises. You'll never have an experience where you overwrite a style and all of a sudden the parent style is updated and then you get some content that you didn't want in your site. That will never happen because it's overwritten. And finally, you get no updates. That means if new stuff is released, you'll never get that in your style sheet until you manually insert it yourself, simply because you are not pulling the content off the original style sheet, you're writing your own. When we look at overwriting in comparison, you have control over everything you specify, but everything else is controlled by the original style. That means you can, for instance, just control the background color or the color of the font, and then everything else is just inherited from the original style. That's actually what it's referred to. You are inheriting styles from the original. You also get new future styles. So if you use one style sheet that only overrides the existing content and a whole new style is introduced in the parent sheet, you will automatically inherit those future styles as well. That in turn may bring in things that mess you up. Because if you make a small change to a large stack of styles, and then one of those styles is updated to include a new element that you haven't accounted for, that new element may mess with your original styling, and that could be a problem. But of course, that has its benefits as well. Because if a theme, for instance, is updated and a new style sheet is released, you will get all those new styles that are incorporated in the new style sheet when you overwrite it. Whereas if you were overwriting it, you would never get those new styles. So how does this apply to our project? Well, in this project, what we're going to do is import the entire style sheet from the 2010 theme and then use overriding to override the style code that we want to change. That does result in a larger batch of style code in total, but it also gives us way more subtle control of what's going on, and it allows us to import future changes to the 2010 theme into our child theme. To make this happen, we're going to import the styles from the 2010 style sheet into the style sheet for our new child theme. Now, when I say import, I don't mean that we go and copy all the styles and then put it into our style sheet. That is overwriting. What we are going to do is override it. So we're going to import the original styles using a dynamic import function called @import. So if we go to the very top of our style sheet, add a couple more lines and then write @import, and then say URL, parentheses, quote, and then dot dot, because we have to jump out of the current folder, /2010 /style.css. And I'll end it with a semicolon and then save it. So what happens now is that we're using a dynamic call to call the style.css file from the 2010 folder and bring it in manually every time we open the page. That also means if someone now makes a change to the 2010 styles, those changes will come into our style sheet. If we now go to the browser and reload it, remember this is what it looked like before we imported the style sheet. And now it looks exactly like 2010. But the cool thing is now we can use the overriding function to override the styles. For instance, I can go in here and create a new style, just like I did before, the body style. Only this time I want to change the font family. So I'll say font family, Arial, Helvetica, sans serif. Now I'll save that style sheet with this new style that's overriding the original style in the 2010 sheet. And as you can see on the front page right now, all our body text is Times New Roman, but when we reload it, it's all Arial. So now we are using the 2010 styles and overriding them using the styles from our style sheet. This process I just showed you, where we imported the original style sheet from the 2010 theme and then used the overriding method to override those styles and make subtle changes to our style sheet, is what we're going to be doing for the rest of this course. This is by far the easiest way of implementing style changes to child themes and still retain the functionality and the flexibility of the parent theme. Of course, it'll result in slightly larger style code because you're now running a lot of double code, but at the same time, it gives you power and flexibility in a way that you would never get if you overwrote everything you did.